Hello, my name is Amanda Holland, and I will be doing my presentation on Erik Erikson. He was born in 1902 and died in 1994. He was an ego psychologist who helped influence personality development and emphasize how important social learning is. Many say that his composing of the unique framework for establishing connections between various stages of human development and the growth of maturity in adult also brought upon a relationship between the individual and society. His framework is known to us today as Erikson's 8 stages of development, which allowed educators to do observations within the stages and make sure that the child was developing appropriately. Although Erikson's theories provide a framework, they are not to be used just solely on that. They are to just provide as an aid to help the educator observe and respond with their students. He believes that every human must find their own way of regulation, which means that they may have to result in interplay between the inner voice of the child and the psychological and emotional urges of the individual, along with the nature of social influences. Children at every stage will learn how to adapt to these new instincts and form a sense of self-regulation. Erikson felt that if educators were honest about their beliefs, consistent in their actions, and find capabilities in their students, that the students would most likely sustain initiative and work towards collaboration in their academic matters. As Erikson's theory of personality involves the entire human lifespan, each stage has its own crisis and task, and when that person reaches that crisis or conflict, it will result as a turning point or stepping stone in their development. Like Simon Freud, he believed personality developed in a series of stages. Only Erikson stages were more about the impact of social experience across the lifespan instead of just solely focus on the person and their biological factors. Erikson's theory was known on epigenetic principle, which means that people grow in a sequence that occurs over time in context of a larger community. During the stage that when they result in the turning point, Erikson believed that either they will successfully deal with the conflict and emerge with a new strength, or if they fail, they will learn to over adapt and overcome that sense of self. In his stages, he breaks it down to where there are 8 stages: infancy, early childhood, preschool, school age, adolescence, young adulthood, middle adulthood, maturity, and maturity. So in each of these stages, there is a guideline of where age appropriately the child should be. But he believed that if you don't push a child to do these things, because if you push the child to develop, then most likely you will cause an emotional disturbance, which would pretty much alter the student's learning. And the first stage is trust versus mistrust. It occurs between birth and 1 year of age and is the most fundamental stage in life. Because infancy is utterly dependent, developing trust is based on the dependability and quality of the child's caregivers, which most likely is their parents. Today's point, there's a lot of different families, though, that impact that. Once they've received these things that they need to survive, that include food, love, safety, nurturing, and warmth, it will build a trust between them, and that's where they will either trust or not trust. If the parent does not respond with those items, then most likely they will form a mistrust in the adults in their life. Wow. And his next stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is where it takes place in the early childhood and where children focus on developing a greater sense of personal control or independence. Children just start to gain their independence, so they start to perform basic actions on their own. They make decisions about what they prefer, tell you yes or no mostly, but allowing students to make the choices and gain control. The caregivers can give children a sense of autonomy. And this also comes with where potty training takes an important role in that, as children start to sense that they have to go potty and they want to learn to control one's bodily functions. And the third stage is initiative versus guilt. This takes place during the preschool years and where children learn to assert their power and control over the world as they are playing and learning through social interactions. Children that are usually successful at this age feel capable and ready to lead others. Others who fail to acquire these skills are left with a sense of guilt, self doubts, or a lack of initiative. And sometimes it takes teachers or educators a long time to build that confidence over time. And the next stage is industry versus impurity. This is where the takes place during the early school years, from usually 5 to 11. Here in West Virginia, that would be kindergarten. Through social interactions, children begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments and abilities. This is where they want to show off their work or say, "Hey, teacher, I know exactly what to do," and they want to inform others of what they can do. Then the next stage would be identity versus confusion. This takes place often during the teenager years, which, ooh, that's a whole different level there. In this stage, the essential role is developing a sense of personal identity where they are continue to be influenced behavior and development for the rest of the person's life. Teens usually want to do what others are doing, and with this, they learn to pretty much find their own personality if it leads to good choices or bad choices. They learn to identify which ones they would like to be and which will lead to role confusion. Sorry, which will, if they fail to do a lot of the good choices, it will lead to role confusion and weak sense of their self. This can mean that, say, a teenager has sat here and tried repeatedly to do something that they thought was the right thing, but turns out it's the wrong thing, then they're going to start questioning everything in their judgment that they are not a good person. And that's absolutely where the mindset will be for a very long time until they are ready to develop that sense of self. Um, the next stage after that would be intimacy and isolation, which usually happens during adulthood. This is where people tend to fall in love, build strong relationships, or if they fail at these aspects, then they will be in loneliness or isolation where they tend to not want to be around anyone. Um, Building on the previous stages, they have to have a sense of their identity and what they are as a person and who they would like to be with another person. Or ultimately, if you don't have a sense of yourself, you end up falling in the other person's particular pattern. The next stage is generosity or stagnation. Sorry, I butcher words really bad. This is where adults tend to create or nurture things that will outlast them. So this is when we just start to think about having babies and we want to create a positive change that benefits others. So in my mind, when we think about that, we want to go ahead and build something that will live on, and we want to build those relationships so that others can see what we've done with our lives. The last stage occurs in pretty much late adulthood maturity, where old age kicks in and we start reflecting back on life. At this point, we look at and determine if we made good choices that made us happy, or if we have a lot of regrets and what we didn't do. While this part addresses throughout the entire lifespan, including old age, older adults tend to look back on the life and feel a sense of fulfillment if it's successful, while if they're not successful, they start to see failure and results in regret, bitterness, or despair, or grumpy old people. With this, Erikson has made it a impact to pretty much educate everyone that just because we follow simple biological components, we are still pushed by society's expectations, prohibitions, and prejudice, which we include in our social learning environment. This is also believed to be the importance of including special education students in classrooms because we need that inclusion and to learn from our peers, as anything good or bad can be changed depending on how society views it. And unfortunately, this is all I have left in my presentation, so I hope you have a good night. Thank you.